Oh shit.
Ah, but did you not get my text?
No, did you not get my text?
I text you saying I was doing Scooby this year and you was going to be
You
Shaggy.
you were meant to be Fred.
No, I remember saying I've got my Scooby Doo costume. Have you got your Shaggy? And you was like, yeah, no, I've got my Shaggy.
Oh fuck, I guess we're both Scooby now. Nice one.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
You rocked up one up, didn't you, Raven?
So if you haven't have guessed, guys, this is the Halloween special,
Yes.
right? Why
It's
my
not
head
comfortable, is
keeps
it?
no, well, look at my fucking head. It's like touching the ceiling.
Yours looks so funny because mine like kind of is a bit more horizontal. Yours is like that.
I know. But yeah, so this is the Halloween special,
Yeah.
right? And
So
we're gonna be
Headbangers podcast and all that. You know, the
Headbangers
intro.
Halloween.
Yeah.
Headbangers Halloween.
It's a spooky episode. Neff, do you want to dive into what this is about?
Yeah, so we thought, you know what? Let's cover something spooky that's happened in the metal scene. And what was more spookier than the church burnings in Norway and the murder of Euronymous? So we thought, fuck it, let's cover that. And this is going to be a one-off episode. You know, we're kind of like looking at it as if it's a true crime sort of episode. You know, we're going to be approaching the aspects of like I think the two probably most prominent people out of this story, Euronymous and Varg. We'll be talking about their childhoods. We're talking about Norway in the 90s. We're talking about the whole black metal scene. And then obviously we'll be going into the church burnings, the murder of Euronymous, amongst many other
I mean,
topics.
essentially, if you're in the metal community, you probably know about this. You know, they made a movie about it, Lords of Chaos. They've also made several documentaries, such as Untitled Chapter, which I watched again yesterday, which is still very good. So yeah, it's quite a well-known thing. Even people that don't listen to metal probably know about this because it was all over the news in Norway at the time, and just because of the sort of media attention it's spun from. But me and Dave wanted to dig a little into it, maybe tell you some things that you might not know about this. And if you know it already, then just enjoy us reciting it. It is Halloween after all. They've remade about 7 Halloween films, so why can't me and Nave do black metal?
Exactly. Just you know what I was like realizing when we were when I was dressing up that we were talking about some pretty serious shit, and I was like, I'm dressed like Scooby Doo. So yeah, I mean,
to be fair, we didn't really have much costume choices.
I know. I mean, this was literally the only. This is the only costume I've ever bought,
and everyone likes Scooby Doo.
I know it. This went down killer at many Halloween parties.
So Nathan, take us into.
Yeah, let's jump into the episode.
Yeah, take us into Norway in the 90s and what was going on.
Yeah, so Norway in the 90s. So I didn't know this until I started researching. Norway in the 90s only had one TV channel until 1992, right? It was a government sort of hosted TV channel. In 1992, they launched TV2, which was like a more commercial things. They eventually got like the X-Files. But one thing as well with Norway, it was also very religious in the 90s, which is why I think both these reasons kind of link into the ideologies of like the people that was in the black metal scene.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, if you're only fed like one thing on TV, everyone's going to be pretty similar. Like when you think about it, because now we've got the luxury of like you can Google things and there's 9 different articles all written by different people on the same topic at all one time, and you can get a lot bigger. In Norway at the time, they just didn't have that. So, people all watched the same thing every day. They had very similar, and it was also quite a tight-knit sort of country. Like in terms of like population sizes, Norway's got quite a small one compared to the rest of the world.
Yeah, definitely. But also in the 90s as well, from what I heard from a lot of the bands and when they were talking, they were quite pissed off with the fact that Western ideas and Western establishments, especially the American things like McDonald's when that came over, there's a lot of like hate of globalization, with Norway kind of being quite traditional. There was all these establishments that were rocking up, and they didn't seem to be very happy with that. I think it's like sort of tarnishing the land, so to speak. So yeah, I mean that's something that Varg and a few of the others expressed their hatred for a bit.
Yeah, as well. Like they did kind of have a bit of a rough time. Like they had a pretty, like most parts of the world, they had a pretty bad recession like towards the end of the 80s. So apparently that wasn't great for them. But as well, I think like these two aspects sort of feed into like the start of black metal and the ideology, because you think about it, these guys must have been, for one, very, very hard to get to listen to metal just to begin with in Norway.
Yeah,
like if
definitely.
you've got one TV channel, you ain't got MTV. I mean, in the 90s, MTV, that's all they covered, well, mainly metal. So for one, it would have been hard to get a hold of that.
Yeah.
For two, like let's face it, most people that listen to it, we're all kind of like sort of like out, like when we were younger, we all had that sort of feeling of being socially outcast.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what sort of drove us to it, because it felt like it was a gang of misfits.
Yeah.
That, sort of found this music as a muse to sort of as an outlet. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
So
more
for
like
me,
a rebellion against establishments, a rebellion against, not being able to access these sort of things. So I guess they felt sort of restricted as well in that time zone.
yeah,
And they saw these things coming over that they thought were ruining their culture.
yeah, and well, as well, I personally think they're probably, because of how hard it was probably to fucking listen to this or find this shit, they took it twice as seriously as the rest of us, because they were like, it took me ages to find this. This is my thing, which
Yeah.
is probably why black metal artists and black metal fans was probably so extreme about this a genre and about metal. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
you think about it, if you like there, like I didn't watch fucking MTV, mate. We had one fucking TV station. You know how I found my shit? Someone gave me a burnt CD or a burnt
Yeah.
tape. Do you know what I mean? Like it's one of those things where like they're gonna kind of be protective about it, and I think
Yeah.
that's why them feeling like it probably felt like times a million the social outcast sort of thing,
Yeah,
and like
definitely.
they probably ramped that up to a million, because they're like, yeah, I want to be completely different to everyone else.
Yeah. And I mean, to be fair, so I mean, obviously, black metal spawned slightly, obviously, from Venom and, Bathory and a lot of these artists that were blackened heavy metal in a way. They had some sort of a dark twist to it, but also the early death metal when it was really raw. And they started to hate death metal when it became very commercialized and produced.
Hmm.
I think they always wanted to stick it raw and make sure that black metal would be the one thing that would counteract it, because it would be, not overproduced, recorded with the shittest equipment,
Hmm.
just to make sure that it's exactly how they believed the music should be.
Yeah, exactly. So, like that kind of like goes into the next part of this episode is black metal in the 90s. So obviously Mayhem, they've kind of been coined the poster boys for the
Yeah,
guys that
definitely.
kind of started this shit. I mean, in terms of like musically as well as the image, I can't really find many people doing the same thing
You could
that they were
argue
doing.
that Dark Throne technically released Blaze in the Northern Sky. I can't remember which one came first, but they were very like coin and turn. So
Mm.
either one, I think they both came out at the same time. But again, Mayhem are known to be, they were getting all the spotlight. Dark Throne was still quite big, and they managed to get bigger over time. But Mayhem, because of the controversies and because of Euronymous' impact and the rest of the band, I think that
Yeah,
overshadowed Dark Throne a bit at the time.
yeah, it would definitely like. So like, who won Mayhem? They're like, at the time when they came out, it consisted of Euronymous on guitars, yeah, um, Necro Butcher on bass, and then you know what? There's going to be so many names I butcher through the entire like throughout this podcast.
Yeah. If you're
And
Norwegian and
so
watching, we're very sorry. We're gonna try our best.
yeah, so and then the drummer, Kyoto Mannheim.
Who you'll probably better
I,
know as Hellhammer.
oh yeah, oh Hellhammer.
Yeah.
I wish I would have just gone to Hellhammer. Um, Obviously, then later on they did add Dead to the roster as the vocalist, I wish we could have covered a lot more about Dead, but I feel like this is going to be quite a long episode anyway.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a couple of things that we did cut out, just simply because we wanted to only really cover the church burnings as well as the murder.
Yeah.
Spoilers.
For
But yeah,
a quick sort of run over with Dead. So he was actually from Sweden. He came to join the band. Definitely suffered from a lot of mental illness. He ended up shooting himself in the face, and then Euronymous then used it as the album cover for the Dawn of the Black Arts. So yeah, he wasn't in the band for too long, to be honest, before all that transpired, and then obviously they got a Tiller after that. But yeah, if you watch Lord of Chaos or you've seen any documentary on Blackmail, they're most likely going to cover that, because I was like, I'd say one of the most shocking things as well to happen in the scene. Besides,
I mean,
the
that
murder.
was like, out of all of it, that's probably one of the first shocking things that happened.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, because like up until that point, it was just a bunch of guys playing, like at this fucking really underground experimental music. But this was when it like sort of like were a bit wacky, because they allegedly, because there's multiple sources that dispute this, but there's also multiple sources that say this happened. That apparently they made necklaces out of a dead skull. One also really interesting tidbit about Dead, when I was researching the episode, is that apparently I think he suffered a ruptured spleen, which was like found when he had internal bleeding. Apparently, some people claimed that was due to an ice skating accident when he was young, but Dead's brother apparently came out and said that he was heavily bullied in high school and believed that the injuries probably suffered from a beating, but as well, like there were quite a few head injuries that he probably suffered as well from the beating.
Yeah.
And people had noted that after that, he seemed a bit different. So, I feel like there might have been something there that might have flipped the switch, because he was apparently a very oddball character.
Yeah.
He was fascinated by dead things, and he suffered from a lot of demons as well, probably PTSD from being bullied.
Which also, if you read anything into Dead as well, or watched the movies, he did used to kill animals as well and string them up. So again, it kind of feeds in as well to the misanthrope part of some of the band members, is that there's some sort of hatred, like lack of worth in life as a whole. So, even when it comes to animals or humans, there's some sort of desensitization to, very extreme things happening.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think like this was the epitome of extreme music for very extreme people.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this was like a very, very, very sort of literal meaning to that. Like, these people were extreme. I mean, some people may call them a bit crazy, but it seemed like it was just a very tight-knit community of people that were essentially just wanted to be outcasts. Like, they didn't want to be popular. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, it actually pissed them off that black metal did become popular.
Yeah, definitely. And even Fenris from Darkthrone, in the Until the Light Texas documentary, when he's having an interview about black metal and what it's become now, he said even if he likes some of the stuff that's come out, he doesn't like how commercialized it's got. He said it was never meant to be like that. He said the whole essence of it was that it was underground and not many people knew about it. And now, obviously, Darkthrone, Burzum, Mayhem all sold tons and tons of albums. Very, very well known.
And what was crazy about it, like, so if you don't know much about black metal, obviously it was deeply tied in satanic, like lyrics. It's kind of obvious with like the name black metal, but if you haven't known, obviously it was very, very, very tied to anti-religion.
Yeah.
But also you could pronounce this. I fucking couldn't. What was the ideology that a lot of people would describe that, like, a lot of them
Misanthrope.
Yeah, misanthrope. So if you don't know what that means, I put like a general consensus, because I had to put that because I thought it was quite it's a just general dislike, distrust, and contempt of the human species, human behavior, or human nature. So yeah, it sounds like the house parties were probably very fun.
Oh yeah. But also the idea of black metal and their sort of ideas and what soon to become the church burnings was the idea that, a lot of them were very, very passionate about their heritage. the Nordic and pagan stuff that went down quite a long time ago. They felt like that was such an integral part of Norway. So when church establishments were building on old sort of pagan shrines, and churches were built on top of that, they felt disrespected by that, and that was a big reason why some of the church burnings transpired, at least to them, as well as it obviously
Yeah.
being a fight back against Christianity.
Definitely, definitely, because a lot of them had you could almost class what they kind of did was as a form of terrorism.
Yeah, well, it is.
Yeah, it is. You got to think when you really, really dive into it, that's kind of what happened. Now I want to kind of go into one character that we're going to obviously then go on to when we talk about the church.
I'm sure you've probably heard of him.
Is Varg and Euronymous.
Yep.
He's obviously a bit of background on him. He was born the 11th of February, 1973. His real name is Louis Catchett. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. Obviously, in his book Lords of Chaos, he kind of that was written after the murder of Euronymous, which again we'll cover.
Yeah.
There's also quite a few, let's say, not very nice things written in there. Yeah, he kind of describes some of his childhood, which for me would kind of explain
some of the ideologies
yeah,
you can see the branches of it starting.
I think it would. Yeah, I think this was at the start of some of the ideologies that he had, as well as it seems like some of it was kind of learned, passed down rather than learned. Do you know what I mean? Not saying that he could have unlearned them, because he very well could have, but it's kind of like you see in the early starts of this. So he doesn't really describe his mum a lot. He doesn't describe what she did as a job, other than that she worked for a large oil company. Again, doing what? Don't really know. He also goes into his father. So his father apparently was an electrical engineer. One very interesting thing that he notes in the book apparently is that his dad, when he was 6, the family moved to Iraq, more specifically in Baghdad. So due to his dad working with Saddam Hussein. Now again, Varg has been notably quite a bullshitter in the past. I did fact check this though. Multiple sources that's on this subject have also quoted this, because it is in his book Laws of Chaos. Apparently there's also, I saw one that he even had a photo of apparently young Varg in Baghdad.
Seems like a thing that I don't think it's a bit specific to lie about. You know what I mean? There's plenty of things that you could make up, but that is a specific thing to say. I think anyway.
Yeah, and one thing that he notes. So, obviously later on, Varg kind of in Lords of Chaos specifically as well. He kind of went into the neo-Nazi belief system.
Yeah.
I heard that apparently when he went to prison for the murder of Euronymous, that's when it really, really came out.
Yeah.
But I feel like you sort of saw the early signs in his childhood of him sort of coming up with this ideology anyway, because the school that he went to, so apparently there was no space in the English school, for people who were obviously governmental sort of figures. That's where they'd send their kids. They'd be around other kids from other countries outside of Iraq. That would be obviously just taught a similar curriculum to what would be over at their home countries. They apparently weren't any school, so they just went to a general school in Baghdad. Apparently, corporal punishment was high in the school, and he apparently lists in the book that he was never hurt or hit because he was white, and apparently his mum backed that up for him. But and then so you're sort of seeing this guy, this kind of stupid sort of fear, like, like superiority. It was like, they didn't hit me because I was white. In reality, they probably didn't hit him because he was working with fucking Saddam Hussein. Like
Yeah,
his father was working for Saddam Hussein. Sorry, like, let's face it, like, like that.
bit of a risky
Let's face it,
business.
that's probably why he didn't get fucking hit. Like, it's not because he was white.
Yeah, but
Um,
that would have spawned, if you had that from a young age, some sort of not messiah complex, but something that makes you feel like you're above other people around
yeah,
you because you're singled out as something else besides the rest of the class.
yeah, and as well, this is all kind of alleged because like I said before, Varg is known for lying. Um, so it could. The thing is, it could be a completely different reason. This could all be made. This could all be made up of this. Because at the time when he wrote this, he was really deep into this disgusting neo-Nazism belief.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if he had put that in there as, like a way of being like, yeah, because I was white.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. But apparently he accuses his dad of being a hypocrite in the book as well, about him being scared of Varg becoming a neo-Nazi, and criticizes him for it. But allegedly and then accuses dad of allegedly having a swastika
Yeah.
flag in. Again, there's no proof to back this up. Apparently his mum also shared similar beliefs, saying that she was scared of him coming back with any girl that wasn't white. So it seems like he had a bit of a weird. I mean, it's safe to say he had a bit of a weird childhood.
Yeah. And that's going
Um,
to affect, well, his beliefs because, whatever your parents will say to you when you're younger might obviously have an effect with your perspective on things as you grow up. And that's the kind of things you're being fed, as well as what's going on around you, that will shape your beliefs tenfold. So,
Plus, with the moving to an entirely different country at quite a young age, it must be quite uneasy as it for a kid. Like, like there's always like a similar story when you come up about other people that have killed, where they've either had a bad relationship with the father, which he does note that apparently him and his mother did get divorced, and his dad just kind of left 10 years ago.
yeah.
So there's again like that sort of bad relationship with a
Yeah.
father figure or a mother figure.
And what happens
Um,
with that, obviously with a divorce, is that often a child will feel quite neglected. So,
mm,
you'll feel like, you are alone in a way. So
mm,
I imagine that had something to do with it as well.
yeah, I mean nothing excuses the shitty
No.
belief system he has as
Yeah.
an adult,
Yeah. If
because he
there's
could
anything
have
that we
very
need to
well
make clear,
educated himself on actual facts, like
yeah.
rather than making up this stupid shit and sort of following this stupid ideology that has no basis in anything.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we do have to make this clear. We're not justifying any actions that he did. But we are just sort of like, pondering, trying to see some sort of ways why he might have the perspective on things that he did and maybe what led to obviously the extreme event that transpired when he killed Euronymous.
Yeah, like yeah, so like I wanted to dive into this because like a lot of the time when you do read about serial killers or killers in general, and look into their childhood, there's always something a bit fishy that kind of pops up there.
Yeah.
Um, so we're not trying to excuse anything that he said, done, or anything. We're
Yep.
just giving a bit of backstory into what his early life would have been like. Um, so I'm gonna go into Euronymous now. Bit shorter than Bags because there's not really much inside of Euronymous, like in terms of his family life, other
Yeah.
than he was born in March 22nd, 1968. Um, and then that's about it. And the only thing that really has been said is apparently his mother had liberal views, whatever that means.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, to be
so
honest, it makes sense as well because Euronymous died in 1992,
mm,
something like that. So that time, obviously, I think Varg was taking most of the limelight when it came to the media because he went to go do that newspaper article. Obviously, everything that happened was on the news at this point. Euronymous is already dead. So I guess at this moment, there wasn't really much to bring up about him. He didn't really do as much interviews. He sort of stayed in the shadows a tiny bit more. So there wasn't really a chance.
Yeah,
For
and
example, if it happened nowadays, there'd be more sort of research and more sources to bring up because obviously Varg's still alive. He's now out of jail and he's doing what he's doing. So there's much more things, and he's very open about. He had a YouTube channel where he talked about a lot of things. As for Euronymous, there wasn't really that opportunity to dive in there.
I think it's probably safe to assume he probably had a relatively normal childhood.
Yeah.
That
we know.
That we know of anyway. Like again, like if there's anything like crazy, I think there would have been something that we've made note of at the time. So yeah, I'd say it's probably safe to assume that he probably had maybe a regular childhood because like I couldn't really find anything on his childhood. Now I kind of want to go into the meat and potatoes of the episode.
Yeah.
So the church burnings. So this was like a massive shock to Norway, because a lot of these churches that were burnt, like over 100 years old, they were classed as like, you know, sacred buildings. Right, they were really important buildings, and massive, quite big landmarks. From like 1992 to 1968. Which I didn't know this many churches were burnt. Like I thought it was like a couple. I mean,
me
like,
too. I was shocked when you told me the amount.
Yeah, at least 50 churches were burnt down. And all out of all the ones that were solved, there were quite a few that weren't. Out of all the ones that were solved, those who were responsible were fans of Blackmail.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just like a lot of people just assume, oh, it were the musicians doing it. No, it was fans as well.
Yeah, because there's something interesting as well on top of that. When I was watching the Untitled Light Texas documentary, there was actually a moment where Varg was in an interview and he said that sometimes fans would come into the store that were like, you know, quite big into the black metal scene, and they were like, you know, super fans of these bands in the inner circle. And they said, oh, I want to burn a church down. And like Euronymous would say to them, oh, yeah, give us the report when you're done. So I think a lot of fans might have come into the store, told them what they were going to do, and then went and did it. But because obviously they weren't getting as much media attention as the bands themselves, they probably were never found.
I mean, fuck me. Like, I've got a list of some of the churches burned. So March 23rd, attempted burning of Storvelt Church in Bergen. I think this one was actually, so this was an attempted.
Yeah.
I don't think it was actually burnt down, but apparently there was an attempt. So, but the first one that was definitely burnt down was in June 6th. The burning of Francof Stave Church in Bergen. Little side note: Varg and Euronymous is strongly suspected to be the culprit of that one. And I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. I mean, and there's so many ways. Like, there's not even like this was the prime suspect. This guy was the prime suspect. This was guy was the prime suspect. There's like just so many that seem that like were either unsolved or.
What I found quite interesting
Not
is what
really,
you told me last night is that you told me that some church burnings still took place even in 2015 when the last one was.
I did some because when I googled Norwegian church, I googled just Norwegian church burning, thinking that would come up with just like a straight up here's, you know, what happened in the 90s. But if you Google Norwegian church burning, let me bring it up now. Apparently it's still been happening like kind of until recently.
Yeah, which is crazy to think because, you know, it makes you wonder, are these fans of black metal that's, you know, are very strongly believing in the same ideology that these bands had? Is it anything black metal related, or is it just people that hate Christianity? Because obviously there was a thing with the black metal bands that they felt like these Christian monuments were sort of overpowering the pagan monuments that were there before, you know, going on a hand of it. So if people believed in that, that would be a reason to do it for them. But also they could just be fans of black metal that, you know, extremely believe in the views that they did.
Yeah, so it was a kind. Well, to be fair, the article kind of positive, but it's like significantly fewer churches are burning in Norway. So I mean, it's a good thing. But yeah, apparently there's been fewer fires since 2000. But there's still been like one or two, like a couple have been noted. Which is still crazy to think about. Like this wasn't isolated to the 90s. Like even after the 2000s, they're like, yeah, well now there's less. I mean, like they're like after like in the 2000s, they're like, yeah, there's less now. I mean, there's records of it from like the 2010s and all that. It's like, oh, there's less now, but it's like it's still the fact that it still kind of went on after this point is crazy.
Yeah. Also, like you said, didn't you say there was a member of Immortal that actually took?
Well, I
Rumor
don't know
has
if you
it
could
anyway.
class him as a member. I don't think you could class him as a member of Immortal because he wasn't. Apparently, he was kicked out after like the second demo.
Oh, okay.
But he was in Immortal. But yeah, he was kicked out after like literally the second demo. But
Yeah.
probably related to the church burning, to be honest. Probably like, hey, fuck off. But yeah. So as a side note, Varg was the prime suspect of 3 of these and convicted of 2. But I think he was at the end, by the end of it. I think he was convicted of 4, or something like that. Well, 2 definitely convicted for. And then they found evidence that he'd planned to burn down 1, which we'll kind of get into in a second. So noticeably as well, he was found guilty for an attempt of an arson of a 4th church, and for the theft and storage of 150 kg of explosives. He was heavily suspected in the actual burning of Frantoff Stave Church, as one of the covers for Burzum's EP, Isks, which obviously ashes, is a photograph of that same church burnt down to the ground.
I mean, we ain't pointing fingers, but
he was not
proofs in the
convicted in
pudding.
this. He was not convicted of this because there wasn't enough evidence. But I mean, he kind of hint. I mean,
I doubt he's in the area just doing a bit of photography. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like the fucking covers like the church, so it's kind of
like, oh, there's a church burning over here. What are the chances that I happen to be in the same area?
So yeah, it's like also an interesting thing to mention. So to concede with Mayhem's release of the most, Brad, can you
The mysterious
pronounce
Don
that?
Satanas.
Yeah, because I'm fucking shit at reading this shit. But yeah, so to coincide with that release, Varg and Euronymous allegedly plotted to bomb Nidaros Cathedral, which is where this 150. Because if you've ever seen photos of it, it's a fucking big church. So, and that same church appears on that album cover.
Can I just take the head of the Scooby-Doo off because it's fucking so warm in here?
That's what I'm gonna do. Oh, okay. Yeah. So that was kind of to coincide with that release. And yeah. So yeah, kind of a fucked up time for Norway. Yeah. Another side note is that Zamos, Faust, and Necro Butcher were also apparently convicted of some church arson. Yeah. Got dry throat, bro. So, on to the next topic.
The biggest event of the whole saga.
And kind of like the cataclysm.
Yeah.
Varg's murder of Euronymous. So I feel like I've done a bit of talking. So Brad, do you want to jump into this one?
Yeah. So onto the murder of Euronymous. So at the career, there was a bit of a rivalry. On the night of the 10th of August, 1993, Varg and Snor Blackthorn drove from Bergen to Euronymous' apartment in Ohio. Not Oslo, sorry, Ohio.
Ohio, that's a long trip.
Yeah, a big trip, yeah. So when they arrived, there's a confrontation between Varg and Euronymous to death. His body was found outside the apartment with 23 cut wounds, 2 to the head, 5 to the neck, and 16 to the back. So the whole thing was mainly because, I mean, it's no one was really there, so it's hard to tell who started on who. Like Varg will say that, Euronymous was plotting to kill him because he was talking in the store that they worked at, that he was pissed off with Varg, all to do with the label and albums. So, he said that, oh, he's going to taser me. So he went over there, and basically Euronymous said that he was going to give him the rights to the music, so he could go ahead and do that. But then when he got there, Varg thought he was going to kill him. He was paranoid, so then went to go reach the knife. Euronymous ran down the stairs. You know the rest.
Yeah.
And so the rumors that wondered, did he actually drink the chocolate milk when he was killing him? Varg did say that was a true part. So that wasn't just a Lords of Chaos Hollywood moment. Apparently that did actually happen. But again,
what's interesting about this though is Varg's idea what Euronymous was going to do to him though. Like Varg believed that Euronymous was using this excuse of like unsigned contracts as a way to trap him, to taser him, to torture him, and kill to death, and film the entire ordeal
as a snuff video. Yeah,
as a snuff video. But there's other reasons why they think he did. There's other reasons. One thing that I kind of think might be somewhat true is that the accusation that it was actually over money troubles. And what's interesting is that a lot of people in the black metal scene had said that obviously Helvete, the record store the Euronymous owned, he had to shut earlier that previous year because the space was apparently too big, and it cost way too much to pay rent.
Yeah,
and not many people went to the store. So, I mean, it wouldn't be surprising if he did sink a bit of money into this store and kind of shortcutted a lot of deals they might have done. Yeah. Again, that's alleged, but it wouldn't be surprising for someone to do that.
And also feeds into maybe why he wouldn't give Varg his rights to his music, because obviously Varg had Burzum on his record label. So maybe he wanted to keep the sort of money he was getting from that for himself to keep the store running. But again, it's all allegedly, like nobody really knows. Varg also said that, he put up more of a fight because in the movie and other sources, it might depict that Euronymous was sort of defenseless and, he wasn't really trying to fight back. He was trying to run away, which was a part of that, which Varg mentioned. But Varg said that he, was quite confrontational and he tried to make the first move on him. So it's a bit of a he said, she said bullshit kind of thing. No,
the thing is, we won't know for definite.
Yeah. Take it as you will.
Yeah, and what's mental about it is that it seems like this was like apparently they were friends. Yeah, I mean, like they kind of like. I mean, Varg even appeared on Mayhem's last record with Euronymous. I mean, he was in the band. He did, I believe it was bass, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So they did have, but I imagine there was always this sort of rivalry between them. From like what I've heard, it seemed like there was because, you think about it, you've got like these two pretty big figures in that scene. They're good at butt heads at some point.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that can be agreed on, both their music is very phenomenal. And, I love both their albums. Very influential in the black metal scene and shaped a whole genre from that. But to them, there was a bit of competition between them, especially because they both came out around the same time and one got more attention than the other one, even though they didn't want to be popular. They didn't like how that felt, I suppose. So that was always that.
Yeah, there's also some rumors that it was meant to be sort of like an outdoing of the murder that happened in the Olympic Park in Lillehammer.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't know about that, it's a really, really upsetting sort of story because Faust, who we've mentioned before,
he was a member of Emperor.
Yeah, he was a member of Emperor. Let me just found it. Yeah, so in August 1992, so same month that the murder of Euronymous happened just a year apart. He killed a individual called Magni Adreessen, and he was a gay man in Lillehammer. At the time, a lot of people believed that had something to do with the murder. Apparently, he propositioned Faust, and they went to the Olympic Park, and that's where he stabbed him.
Yeah.
And he died. Unfortunately, died. I mean, there were no primary suspects until the year after. It went unsolved for such a long time because it didn't have anyone to pinpoint.
Yeah.
Apparently, he claimed Faust claimed he had no remorse in the late 90s, but later on has kind of said that. Obviously, people were like this has to be because he was gay, but he then later on and said, look, it wasn't. Apparently, he just wanted to know what it was like to kill someone.
Yeah.
And like a couple other people had said that he was obsessed with murder.
Yeah.
Like he was obsessed with serial killers. So they said it probably wasn't out of his character, to like find out what it was like to kill someone. It's a really heartbreaking thing, especially when you find that the family didn't know who killed their son until a year later. Now we don't know the reason. We don't know the reason why.
Yeah.
Because it's all sort of. I mean, the only person knows why he's Faust, and he's said what he said, but whether we know if it's true or not, it's another thing.
Pinch of salt, like everything else. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that happened, and Faust was not found for an entire year of being guilty of it.
Yeah.
So that again, that's another thing that I didn't actually really know about. I thought it was just a church burners and murder, but there was other stuff that was happening that was quite fucked up.
Yeah, definitely.
So obviously, like back to the murder of Euronymous, is that apparently later on, I feel like we had to put this in here because it was quite a recent. I mean, I think we even covered this on one of our first episodes of the podcast. Was apparently Necro Butcher had turned around and said, that he wanted to kill Euronymous himself.
Yeah.
And he had plans on doing this because in his eyes, it was sort of the entire dead suicide. He felt like he had capitalized it and turned it into a money-making scheme.
Yeah. Which is not wrong, to be honest.
Yeah, in his words, so the direct quote is, due to him tastelessly capitalizing on dead suicide. Which he's not wrong. I mean, like when you look at what happened in dead suicide, is like when apparently Euronymous found him. I mean, they almost got charged for disrupting a crime scene because he moved things around to make the photo look better.
Yeah, and then took the picture and used it for the album cover.
Then used it for the album cover, but then called the police.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't imagine. I can imagine if you had been close to that person, like if you're in a band, you probably walk quite close. They'll probably walk quite close. That would fucking absolutely piss you off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like this entire thing, this entire story, like more I researched it, I was like, shit, didn't know that happened. Shit, didn't know that happened. And so yeah, so what happened after Euronymous' murder? So after the murder, Varg was arrested, as well as many other people that was kind of known to be in that scene, as well as and bigger people. And after confessions, allegedly some people had confessed to the crimes, but also pointed the finger at others, which is where you see the convictions for these church burnings, Faust's murder, among a lot of other things. Yeah. So obviously, there seems like there's someone like, yeah, but I also know that fucker did that, and that's a thing that's why we have like on the list that we have. That's why we know who was convicted and we know who was sort of suspected because apparently even Euronymous apparently partook in the burning of killing chapel in Oslo with Varg, Frost, and Euronymous all took part in that church burning. So yeah, obviously, everyone kind of knew what each other were doing, and the minute sort of there was any arrest, some people were like, I don't know who did this. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah, after that, Varg was obviously sentenced to 21 years in prison, which is Norway's maximum penalty.
Yeah. So like unlike America and a lot of other places, you can get life for doing such a crime. You would get, I'd say like you must, it's 25 years is quite a common sentence that you'd get elsewhere. Or you get life, or in America, I don't know if they still do the death, the electric chair, or they do like, death row. I think they still do.
In America, it depends what state you're in.
Yeah.
So like the state of California, there's no death penalty, but I'm pretty sure in I think Texas there is.
Yeah. But in Norway, it's not as extreme. Like that is the biggest sort of penalty you can get is getting 21 years. If that's still the same.
Though, 21 years for murder
seems a bit short, but
yeah, it doesn't seem like it's kind of fitting of the crime. Like, one thing I kind of forgot to mention about the murder as well, was that apparently, let me just find it because it was an interesting little tidbit. Yeah, so Varg apparently something that Neko Butcher said. Yeah, so Neko Butcher apparently chimed in and said that he believed that the reason why Varg killed Euronymous as well was to do with death threats that Varg had received from Euronymous.
Yeah.
And there was a little sort of like link on the website I was looking at that would kind of went into like a bit of an interview where he said, look, that was kind of his reaction to everything. If someone had pissed him off, he'd send it. So probably adds to the story that Varg was saying that there was a bit of paranoia there. Again, we don't really know. So yeah, Varg was obviously sentenced to 21 years in prison. I think, and then and it also convicted. I mean, murder and then this shit on top of it equal 21 years. I don't get how. He was convicted, obviously, of 2 of the arsons, the theft of the like 100 kg of explosives, and the day he was sentenced, two more churches were burnt down.
Yeah.
As a lot of people believed a sign of support for Varg.
Yeah.
Which is, again, that's a bit fucked. Blackthorn, who we don't really know what his involvement in the murder was.
Yeah.
But from like a lot of the sources I've seen anyway, it was kind of like he drove him there, probably didn't know what happened in there, and then drove him back. He was sentenced to about 8 years.
I mean, from what I've heard as well, so obviously he did driving back. In Varg's interview, he said that he walked in as it was happening and ran out and ran to the car with the keys. In obviously the movie and a few other sources, apparently he stayed in the car and waited for him to come out. So, yeah, I mean, some say that he didn't know what was going on. Some say that he had a part in it, but no one really knows.
Yeah. And then obviously that same month saw the release of Brad. Can you do the honors?
Yes. So The Mystery of Storm Satanis, which equally is Mayhem's best album. So despite all the chaos, the chaos that was going on, it spawned a very, very influential, groundbreaking album for Mayhem, which one of my best albums, in the black metal scene.
Well, a bit of an interesting tidbit again is obviously Euronymous was on guitar, Verkness was on bass guitar. Euronymous family did ask Mayhem if they could take that off. But Hellhammer said that he thought it'd be fitting to only have Victim and Murderer on the same album.
Yeah.
And then obviously later on, Varg was released from prison in 2009.
Yeah. And then since then, at least for a few years after he has doing stuff, so he's still releasing music. It's been a while since he's released his last album, but he started to go into like more folky ambient music. He's done a few like sort of Dungeons and Dragons style games, and he's also had a YouTube channel for a while before taking it down, which then he expressed his quite extremist beliefs. So
On
that's why it's
and
got taken down.
side note as well on that, he did say he homeschooled his children, which fuck me, like Jesus Christ. Yeah, nah, like, considering half the shit that was said on his YouTube, oof,
Yeah, there's gonna be some
um,
extreme views. Won't talk too much about that, but yeah, I mean, I don't think you'll be able to find his videos anywhere. I don't know if he posts them anywhere else, but
there's some channels that still repost some of the old ones, but
yeah,
he's mainly like out, well, not out of count, but like the meme side of things, like
yeah,
of all the weird shit he kind of did in his videos.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean that obviously that was taken down because
yeah.
for good fucking reason.
I'll put it this way:
Um,
like videos get taken down for a lot less. You could get your video taken down for swearing too much in it, or you can get your video taken down for anything that's even a bit left field. So the kind of things that he was talking about were due to cause a bit of
yeah,
controversy. So yeah, but
yeah,
that is black metal in a nutshell.
yeah, and like I mean, I had quite well not fun, but I thought the research side of this thing
Yeah,
was quite interesting. Um, I mean, a lot of the bands are still going now. A lot of the people that were in it,
yeah,
are still going now. You can literally go still see them. A lot of them have also talked about the church burns in deep detail in
yeah,
interviews where, I mean, it's kind of divided the scene though. Like you see a lot of them now in their older age, sort of being like, probably shouldn't have done that.
yeah,
I didn't support it at the time. But you also have seen some people like Gal, sort of go whole hammer with it and saying there should have been more burnings.
yeah. So there's
Um,
definitely different perspectives on the whole thing. One thing that's clear is that a lot of good albums came out of that time, despite the tragedies and the craziness of the whole scene. There was a lot of good albums. Like I said, a lot of bands are going now. Mayhem's still going strong. You know, we saw them, didn't we? Quite
well,
recently,
I wasn't
years
there,
ago. You
remember?
weren't there. Oh, you weren't there, yeah. I
Yeah, if
saw
you
them two
remember,
years
that was
ago.
the one damnation I didn't go.
Yeah, but yeah, there's been a lot of other things that happened in Blackmail, but we felt like this was, the most extreme case. I mean, if you want to read into it more, if this is your first time hearing about it all, you can watch the Lords of Chaos movie, although it's very Hollywoodized. A lot of people say that
Yeah,
it's not exactly factual, but there's the books that you can read about it. There's the Until the Light Takes, which I think is a good one, but it's mainly from the band's perspectives as opposed to, other outside views on it. So, you might find it is a tiny bit biased. But if you want to know more about the band members and what they think, that's probably a good one to watch.
yeah. I mean, like, um, I mean, it's definitely like the craziest thing that's ever happened in metal. Like, it's probably I mean, and there's a lot of shit that I cut
Yeah.
from it that I feel didn't fit too well. Like the entire stuff I mean, I mean, to be fair, this was a lot shorter than I thought it would be, the episode. But like, I was writing it and I got to about four plus pages, and I was there like, there's just so much to put. To the point
Yeah.
where I'm like, I really wanted to just focus on the main core bits. I mean, the stuff about Dead, there's endless stuff
Yeah.
that you can find. There's so much stuff that you can find about like Hellvector, the record label Euronymous ran, the record shop that Euronymous ran, that was also kind of the headquarters for his record label. There's rumors of the inner circle, the black circle, some people call it. That's the facts behind that has been disputed. Varg and Necro Butcher both had turned around and said that it wasn't really true. It was something that Varg had then said to the press. to kind of make Blackmail seem more interesting. He said it wasn't like there was any membership cards or anything like that. I mean, you can still go visit it. I mean, our friend Dylan went, and he said it's a coffee shop now. And they've still got the basement downstairs where like they drew obviously all the Blackmail symbols and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we cut. On another note, if you know quite a lot about this subject and we happen to get anything wrong, please just let us know.
Yeah. Always willing to learn.
Or if you was even there, like maybe you're like, like 50-year-old guy now. It's like, hey, I was one of the guys that was around in Norway, and at the time, we'd love to hear sort of your stories on it.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's very much we like to summarize what went on and kind of give information to people that might not know anything about it. I mean, say what you want about it, but it's definitely an interesting time, and it was crazy that it all happened. So, just reading into it if you don't know much about it, but yeah, it is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I can't believe the amount of shit that actually happened in such a short space of time, really. Like, can you imagine living in Norway whilst this was happening?
No, you're like, what the fuck's going on?
Yeah, like, it's fucking crazy. Like, which is probably why Blackmail, in a weird way, grew so big, was all these actions that caused, I mean, like, worldwide news. Especially national news in Norway.
Absolutely.
But yeah, if you liked this episode, obviously give us a like and subscribe or follow if you're listening on Spotify.
And we are also on Patreon now. So you can find that if you go into the bios of any of our social media, you can find it there. If you want to support us, that's great. If you want to just like and subscribe, then that's also great too. And we hope that you enjoyed this Halloween episode. Hope you have lots of spooks, lots of pumpkin soup or whatever the fuck you want on Halloween. But
like, go to do some trick or treating as well.
Yeah, as long as you're the right appropriate age. Might be a bit weird if you're a 50-year-old man walking up asking for treats.
It depends. If you're wearing a mask and you're quite a short dude, you could get away with it.
Yeah, depends.
I mean, that's free sweets.
That's true. Depends how much you're willing to risk. But yeah, catch you next episode.